Now available in paperback and e-readers, The Temptation of John Haynes. Give in to temptation and pick up this action-packed African-American paranormal romance. Get The Temptation of John Haynes in paperback and e-readers today.
Hello, we are live, and I'm coming at you with 5. Welcome to another edition of Gavin Reshaw Presents here on my channel, gboot2786. Whoever you are, wherever you are, I hope you all are doing blessed and being safe on this Thursday evening, given our circumstances. We are joined again by a friend of the program, my brother, Mr. Sean James. Sean, of course, is the author of the John Haynes series. He is also the author of The Man Crisis, and I guess he also plays piano back there.
No, it's my cell phone.
Oh, okay. All right. What's going on, John? Sean, excuse me. I called you.
I'm good. I'm just taking. I'm ready to do the interview.
Taking the John Haynes series, man.
All right. Well, I'll leave a link to it in the description. You can pick up one of those books on Amazon. I'll leave a link to it in the chat.
Yeah. Sean, can you do us a favor? Could you bring your camera down a little bit so we can see the banner is in the way? There we go. All right, so everybody get a look at it. All right, man. Sean, thank you for joining us again, man. And how have you been?
I'm all right.
All right, and you've had a couple of new books come out already. I know you're working on Eternal Night, is it?
Yes, that's available on Amazon. Not on for pre-order right now.
That's available now?
No, it's available for pre-order. You can pre-order it on Kindle right now. I'm going to leave a link to that in the chat. So it's not available now. It's
okay. I'm sorry. Okay, it's not available now. You had froze up, and that's why I had stopped you. So, okay, yeah, well, it's available for pre-order, and you have also the latest John. Is it the latest John Haynes?
Yeah, which is The Man with Nothing to Lose. So I'll leave a link to both of those in the chat, and people can pre-order them.
All right, and yes, Sean will. Yeah, and you can get those on Amazon.com. Sean will have a link posted. I'll share with everyone. We got a couple people in the building too. Everyday People says, "What's up, Black man? What's up, Everyday People? How you doing?" We're gonna get into it, Sean. There's just a lot of stuff that's been going on, man. This has been a busy week. It's like we're living in another world, you know. Combine it with the coronavirus pandemic, then of course you have the back in February was what Ahmaud Arbery's killing. Then you had Breonna Taylor, and of course the George Floyd lynching, because that was a lynching.
Yes, it was.
As well as Ahmaud Arbery's. And I don't know if we talked about George Floyd before. I think we did. I know we spoke about Ahmaud Arbery, but in seeing what happened with George Floyd, I know you've commented on it, and everybody has, man. And we've tried to figure out what is the solution in all of this. And of course, there have been talks about defunding the police and so forth. What do you think should be the first step that we do in regards to stuff like this, man?
Well, the first thing I think people are going to have to do is we're going to have to really focus on acknowledging that there is a problem as related to policing and Black communities. And we're getting to that point, but I'm seeing where we're losing track of it because we don't really have leadership that is setting an agenda for Black people. And we really need somebody to really set an agenda so we can get some goals set up, because I see how we're losing track of focus on things because everybody's trying to get in front of this issue, but nobody wants to really acknowledge it and work towards constructive solutions. So we have a lot of people who are making these emotional arguments like Black Lives Matter, talking about defunding the police, which is just completely ridiculous. And then we have
makes no sense.
And then we have a lot of these politicians talking about funding community programs, which has already been proven to be an abject failure. And what I believe we need to start doing is something I proposed in the Man Crisis, which is we need an investment in Black men, and we need to start focusing on investing in Black men, because the greatest first line of defense for Black communities is a group of Black fathers and Black business owners. And if we have a strong base of Black fathers and Black business owners, we can really minimize the impact of police on Black communities.
Right. And Sean, let me just say this to top on point on what you're saying. I've been reading the Powernomics by Dr. Claude Anderson, and he hints about that because he talks about the hierarchy and how racism works, whether it's horizontal and vertical. The problem with us is that we keep going horizontal sideways and we're not going up, which is vertical, and which is what we need to do. And in the 1960s, you had the Black man that was in the home, not only in the home, but that was defending his communities. I mean, our communities were together, even despite, you know, segregation. We had businesses that we would support. And on top of that, we also had Black men who owned guns. We still do, but, you know, like in Louisiana, for instance, the Deacons for Defense that started because the Ku Klux Klan and Bogalusa would be marching into the Black communities. These armed veterans, Black war veterans, had M16s and M60s as well as other guns and rifles and pointed at them and turned their ass back around. And I'm just, you know, I think there's a notion that we can't, you know, I've heard of the movie, was it Queen and Slim that came out? I didn't even bother to see it, just knowing who Leanna Waithe is and her positions. But I saw from people telling me this. I talked with a friend of mine. He's like, he's tired of showing movies like Black people can't. I don't know if you saw the movie, but you know, not to give it away, but he said he was tired of movies where it shows like we can't beat these people because they're beatable.
Yes, they very much are beatable, but the whole thing is about us learning how to take the lead in our own lives, and it's about us learning how to protect and defend what's our own. And the whole thing is our perception has to change, and that's one of the ultimate foundations of all the change has to happen is with Black men. Because when I look at this whole Black Lives Matter and all the things they're talking about police, they're coming at it from a female perspective, one, and that's a perspective where we're seeing the outside looking in, and two, we have no Black men speaking on their own behalf. Because if you look at most of the discussions on the murder of George Floyd and the murder of Ahmaud Arbery, it's Black women, non-Blacks, and whites talking about what they want to do, and not Black men taking the lead and talking about the problem of police brutality and police violence and the problems that lead to this, which is Black communities not having any sort of leadership or protection from Black men. And we're not seeing Black men taking charge for their own agenda and setting an agenda for what they want to do in Black communities in order to get change. So Black men are primarily the ones affected by this racial profiling, this police brutality, and this police violence, but we don't see any Black men talking or speaking on their own behalf. And that's really troubling for me because it shows how weak Black men are as a collective, that we're not taking the lead on our own cause and our own struggle.
Well, there's some truth to that. I would just add a couple of things, though, about it. I think that what has happened is that we have been neutralized also by other groups that have piggybacked off our struggle. Now, I actually did a video on this on my Patreon yesterday, but for everybody that's watching, you had mentioned that it's mostly females that run this. It was 3 females that co-founded Black Lives Matter. But the other aspect of it, too, is that they're also pro-LGBTQ, which is also another issue that is part of that. And if you go to the Black Lives Matter website, and I had heard stuff about this before, and you look at just look at this now about Black Lives Matter, what we believe, 6 years strong, her story. So that let's looking at that her story is history. And these are the 3 women who founded this, although I always ask whether they get the money for it, because I've heard George Soros is behind this as well. But if you look at the About section and just read what they believe, I was going over this. Now, I'm going to read through, I'm going to read certain points of it, but everybody that's watching this, you can go look at this yourself, but let me just read this part. It says, we intentionally built and nurtured a beloved community that is bounded together through a beautiful struggle that is restorative and not depleting. Sounds good so far. We are unapologetically Black in our positioning. In affirming that Black Lives Matter, we need not qualify our position. To love and desire freedom and justice for ourselves is a prerequisite for wanting the same for others. We see ourselves as part of the global Black family, and we are aware of the different ways we are impacted or privileged as Black people who exist in different parts of the world. Now, this is where it gets interesting. We are guided by the fact that all Black lives matter, regardless of actual or perceived sexual identity, gender expression, economic status, ability, disability, religious beliefs or disbeliefs, immigration status, or location. We make space for transgender brothers and sisters to participate and lead. We are self-reflexive and do the work required to dismantle cisgender privilege and uplift Black trans folk, especially Black trans women who continue to be disproportionately impacted by trans antagonistic violence. We build a space that affirms Black women and is free from sexism, misogyny, and environments in which men are centered. We practice empathy. We engage comrades with the intent to learn about and connect with their context. Now, coupled with that, now this is another interesting part, Sean, these two. We make our spaces family friendly and enable parents to fully participate with their children. We dismantle the patriarchal practice, notice that word, patriarchal practice that requires mothers to work double shifts so that they can mother in private even as they participate in public justice work. As you know, patriarch stands for fatherhood. It's a masculine term. In Latin. We disrupt the Western prescribed nuclear family structure requirement by supporting each other as extended families and villages that collectively care for one another, especially our children, to the degree that mothers, parents, and children are comfortable. So right there with those two, they're saying that they don't support, one point they're saying they're family friendly, but on the other part, they're saying we don't care for the family structure, the traditional family structure. Let me go on right quick. These last two. We foster a queer affirming network. When we gather, we do so with the intention of freeing ourselves from the tight grip of heteronormative thinking, or rather the belief that all in the world are heterosexual unless she, he, or they disclose otherwise. Well, if there are no heterosexuals in the world, there would be no homosexuals. That's a gimme. We cultivate an intergenerational and communal network free from ageism. We believe that all people, regardless of age, show up with the capacity to lead and learn. So what they're saying right there is that children can make their own decisions, essentially. That's what I read from that last statement. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But I don't think I'm wrong. Do you, Sean, do you see anything with this?
I see a lot wrong with that because it just sounds like a bunch of incoherent babble. When I listen to those statements, they make absolutely no logical sense because you cannot have a Black family without the Black father. And when I listen to those statements and those points, they clearly show me that most of these Black Lives Matter founders, who are primarily Black lesbians, are coming from the perspective of a female-headed household. They come from the single mother household perspective, and that single mother household perspective is one that is really unbalanced and it really does not present us with any sort of logical platform. I mean, when I listen to those talking points, the mission is not a clear one. It does not have a clear vision. And with Black Lives Matter, everything is, as I see it, running primarily on feelings, not facts. And that's one of the big problems with Black Lives Matter is they run on feelings and they run on things that are just, they have no significance as related to developing anything, because you cannot have a Black family without a Black man and a Black woman. And one of the big problems is with all of these Black men getting killed is we have Black women trying to be the leader and representing an issue that Black men need to be speaking about. It should be Black men out here as the face talking about this issue of racial profiling, police brutality, police violence, and the terrorism that goes on in Black communities. But we're only hearing again from Black women and these white leftists, but we're not hearing from Black men. And that's the
Right.
most troubling thing about Black Lives Matter is they want to have this agenda where they want to include all of these people, but they want to use Black men as some sort of springboard and to elevate their platform and push this alphabet agenda, which serves no purpose to heterosexual Black men. And heterosexual Black men not being in their head of household position is the primary reason why so many Black men are winding up in dangerous situations and why so many Black men are winding up in trouble because there's no Black male leadership to set a direction for the Black community. But they're gonna sit there and talk about all this other stuff when we need to be focusing on Black men's issues. This is why I said we need Black males to come out and speak on their own behalf and have their own platform, because the Black Lives Matter platform is not about promoting Black men, nor is it about promoting a Black agenda that supports Black men or helps Black men and Black women build strong families and stronger communities.
Yeah, well, and a couple that too. If you look further, this is the About Black Lives Matter section. You also note they also we affirm the lives of Black, queer, and trans folks, disabled folks, undocumented folks, meaning illegal immigrants, folks with records, women, and all Black lives along the gender spectrum. And what I would say to that, of course, yes, as Black people, we all suffer in this country, but when you're adding on other groups, you're also diluting from our struggle and taking away from that when you add these other groups and other so-called commonalities on in here. And, and I also question whenever there's money involved, because Black Lives Matter is also listed as a corporation. Now, no, Candace Owens has said the same thing, but of course, I have nothing in common with Candace Owens, but that may be the only thing I agree with her, but that's a fact that it is a corporation. It's incorporated if you look at it carefully on their website. And yes, Squeaky G said Black Lives Matter was co-opted when they took millions in donations. That's another thing, Sean, I'm going to get into later on about all of these donations to fight racism that all of these Fortune 500 companies have said they're doing. I know Adidas, I believe, has said they're doing something, as well as you had AMC, which, of course, the AMC television network, they also posted something where they're going to be giving monies. These countless groups, AT&T and have talked about they stand with the Black community, and I'm going to ask you about that. But yeah, I mean, people should be very careful about what they support, because Black Lives Matter. Of course, that name sounds great, and we know that Black Lives Matter, but it depends on who's running it as well.
Yeah, but the whole thing is that if Black Lives Matter, really, if it's a corporation, it's not really acting in our best interest. And if you look at the mission statement, it's not acting in the best interests of Black men. Because
we need a nuclear family.
Yeah, the Black community's problems are the fact that we have not had fathers in the home for the last 50 years. We have not had fathers in the leadership role that God gave men. And we have not had Black men leading and controlling the community and their economy. And the only way for Black lives to matter is for there to be a Black family and for Black children to see Black men and Black women valuing their lives and seeing value in each other. But we're not getting there because we have these movements like Black Lives Matter, which are basically, again, they're not created by us or sponsored by us. And the missions are not about building Black families. It's all about pushing somebody's alphabet agenda. And that agenda, again, is not one that supports the Black agenda. And what I see is we need a Black agenda, because when you have a Black agenda, you can create a Black platform that will address Black issues, set a timetable for addressing those issues, and set some goals for achieving change. And we're not going to get change from Black Lives Matter because it's a very disorganized movement. It's a very directionless movement. And it's all, again, primarily emotion that makes people feel good, but really does not help anything grow overall.
most definitely. And what do you think? I'm gonna, I guess, get into it as well because I listened to Tariq Nasheed, and he was talking earlier today. Shout out to him. And of course, he was talking about Adidas, and Adidas, of course, is trying to, I guess, put resources into Black Lives Matter. And he stated that the Adidas founder, Adolf Dassler, that's where the name came from, that he was an actual Nazi, if I'm not mistaken. And supposedly Jesse Owens was the one who first wore Adidas track shoes at the 1936 Olympics when he beat, the Aryan race, supposedly. And I'm looking here, though, it says Adidas was founded in 1949, which is, of course, after, no, it was founded in 1924. I apologize. Then it was called Gruber Dassler Schlucksfabrik. I hope I said that correctly. But it was founded as Adidas on August 18, 1949. So they changed the name of it. So that's what happened. But yeah, Dassler persuaded U.S. sprinter Jesse Owens to use his handmade spikes at the 1936 Olympics. And of course, Sean, you being a little older than me and being in New York, Adidas was, of course, made popular by Run DMC.
Yes, I was there when it happened.
You were there when it happened.
Yeah, well, good.
Yeah, just for Throwback Thursday purposes, and just a little, I guess, lighten the mood a little bit. When Run DMC, you obviously remember when Run DMC debuted. What was that like to see those guys on MTV, which was, I think, at the time still mostly segregated?
Well, I used to watch them on New York. What is it? New York. It was like Friday night videos, and I used to watch them on the PBS music videos in U68. But they used to they started the whole Shell Tops thing and the tracksuits, and that's what made it popular. Otherwise, people weren't buying that stuff. If it wasn't for Run DMC, Adidas wouldn't be relevant. I mean, if it wasn't for hip hop, most of these sneaker companies wouldn't be anything.
Yeah. And it's interesting though, but what is it why blacks can't get our own shoe company, our own shoemaking factory? Why, like, what are the rules that say that we can't have stuff like this? Because
we can have that, but the whole thing is it's our mindset and our frame of thinking. The thing is that the problem with a lot of black people is that they have this mindset of the white man's ice is colder, the white man's products are better, and they buy into the idea that if they buy this item from this white company, that they will be able to have some sort of value and worth for owning these items, when it's us who make those items valuable by purchasing them. And if we go out here and purchase our own items, we can go out here and make value in it ourselves. The problem is our perception of self, and that's something that is hard to change because a lot of people don't know how insidious white supremacy truly is. And you have to get your mind right in order to find that and change your perception of self, where you start looking at black products and seeing value in black products and building and supporting your own. Now, when I go out here and I see a black owned product like Chris Brown's Omega Black, I see a higher value in that because it came from another brother. So I'm going to go out here and support it. Same thing with a lot of the Kickstarters I put pledges in. I see value in other black creators' products. So I want to go out here and elevate those products and promote them and support them so that these guys can get to the next level. So that's all about us and our perception. So we have to change our perception if we want to elevate ourselves.
Well, most definitely we have to do that. But I mean, we still, as you mentioned, we still got to deal with white supremacy and racism at the end of the day, because I know being an attorney myself, when I've tried to get loans for my business, I've been turned down. I never got a break with certain things, and I had to do, and I still do side jobs just to go and support myself, just to get myself through the end of the day, because there may be days where I don't have that client that's going to come in. You're going to have a slump. So those things happen. But as a community, which is what, and Dr. Claude Anderson even says this right now, there is no black community. What we have are black neighborhoods at this time. And you see that because a community is where you can go back and you can not only live, but also build your businesses and work with your neighbors. Out here in New Orleans, and I've told you this before, in New Orleans East, we actually have right across from us, not too far, an entire village of Vietnamese, a whole Vietnamese community where they have, their shops and businesses right next to each other. They don't go out of that area unless they're got to go get something that's not there, but they come back there. They have their businesses there. They support each other. And of course, with all the money that they make, they send it back home to Vietnam. That's just, and that's something that they continue to do. I was reading, as I was reading further in Powernomics, I read that in the year 2000, for instance, in Detroit, the Arab community, which is only less than 1% there, they made over $69 million in 1 year just because they have gas stations and convenience stores set up in the black part of town. And we support those guys. And of course, you saw with George Floyd, that Cup food store. And I've heard some stories about it. I don't know how true this is. And I don't know if I should say this. I was listening to Judge Jill Brown. Some people have said that this is just my opinion. So I don't know if it's a fact, but they say that was a front for a Palestinian mob. I don't know how true that is. So let me just put that out there. I don't know, but that's what I've heard. And I don't know about all of that, but I do know sometimes we go to these businesses continuously that disrespects us. And, that was the ultimate insult where they supposedly George Floyd is giving a $20 bill and there's a counterfeit. But number one, we've never seen, what the bill looks like. It's irrelevant now because Mr. Floyd is dead. He's not going to have his day in court. And something like that didn't require for police officers to be out there. And, it's just dangerous times we living in, bro.
Well, I've been living with that ever since I was a teenager. I mean, I remember going to a Carvel in 1989, and I ran into the exact same thing when I had a $10 bill. I was getting some ice cream for my family, and this clerk decides that my money was not what he thought was real. And thank God I was able to just leave the store and in one piece. So we've had this for years. And the big problem with our black neighborhoods is the fact that we don't have people looking to go out here with a builder's mindset to take back our neighborhoods. And the other big problem is we just don't work together, because starting a business, it doesn't take that much money. I mean, with my SJS Direct imprint, I just took a little bit of money I saved up and started publishing books. And a lot of people, they want to think that it's starting big, but starting business is something small, and you have to work, and you have to just take your time and go really slow. I mean, I've been at this for 10 years and I've made some progress. I'm not where I want to be, but I keep persevering and keep pushing, because I'm hoping that one day I can get to the point where I can sell thousands of copies of a book. I mean, Man Crisis sold 350 and it's looking like it's getting near 400. But a lot of people, they want to have, when they think of black businesses, they want it to be superstar out of the gate. They don't understand that the little support that you give in the beginning helps build this business, and it helps it to grow. And as the business grows, you can then go out here and hire other people in your community and give them jobs, and that can help uplift more people. But a lot of black people, we don't want to do that work, and even worse, we don't want to do that work together, because when it comes down to a lot of black people, they have bought into this Messiah complex. And because they've bought into this Messiah complex, they're thinking that one man is going to come in like Dr. King and be some sort of savior who comes in and saves the black community. And that's not the case at all. When it comes down to the black community, yes, we laid a foundation with the civil rights movement, but we have not really built on that momentum, because it was up to us, for all of us, to come together and start building from there. But a lot of people, they're still in this, I'm waiting for this Messiah to come, but that Messiah is not coming. It's for you to put that work in. And it's like the Bible says, faith without works is dead. And a lot of black people don't want to put in the work, and two, they don't want to work together, because they think that if they work with white people, they will have something better. But you have to work together if you hope to build and achieve and accomplish something. That's why these Arabs are able to come into our community, because we don't come together to work with each other, and we don't think value of each other to invest in each other, because we have to invest in each other in order to get dividends. And black people, big problem is we don't want to invest. We usually want to try to compete against each other instead of trying to elevate each other and elevate things so that we can improve our standard of life or quality of life. Because I noticed when I was living in one part of the Bronx, when these Arab stores came to the Hispanic areas, they were not making any money. I mean, the Hispanics shut them down. They practically I would see for the last 2-3 years when I was living in my old neighborhood, these Arab stores, they were just going out of business left and right because the Hispanics just refused to support them. But Black people will sit there and we'll support everyone because we've drank the integration Kool-Aid, and we're looking for social acceptance and we're looking for social currency, not understanding when you build, it's about building economic wealth. And what we do is we trade social currency, which has no economic value and no wealth building asset, for social currency and trying to be cool and popular with everybody else. And that has no value whatsoever. That's why Black communities stay poor, because we want social currency and not economic wealth.
Well, let me ask you, on that note, do you think that store where George Floyd is, do you think that Black people should be shopping there?
No, they shouldn't be shopping there. It should have their own stores. I mean, if we had our own businesses, it would be a completely different scenario. And if we had people who understood the racial profiling in these stores, they would understand not to go there. I mean, ever since I was a kid at 15 years old, I made it a point to try to avoid dealing with these type of stores whenever I could, because I know that a lot of these stores, they when they see a Black man, they always want to try to scrutinize his money. And then sometimes they try to racially profile you because they think the worst of you. They don't see you as a customer.
They don't see you as a human being.
No, they see you as a criminal. And what they want to do is find some reason to come after you. So that's why I always would try to avoid shopping in those places. And if there was like a chain market, I would go there. And these days with the internet, I just order whatever I want so I can avoid dealing with these type of people altogether. I just rather just buy in bulk and order what I want, because I don't want to deal with this racial profiling and because I've run into this so many times in my life, what George Floyd ran into, where people are taking your money and scrutinizing it and trying to tell you that it's fake. And they wouldn't do this to a white person, but they do this to the Black person because they've bought into these stereotypes about Black people. And they have these ideas about Black people. And again, when I look at the Cup Food store, I hold them just equally accountable for the murder of George Floyd, because they escalated things in this incident to the point where this man was murdered. And they did this because they just wanted to be able to say that they could break this Black man down and say that he was some sort of criminal, when there is no telling where that money came from. I mean, a lot of these ATMs,
for all we knew.
A lot of these ATMs, they're giving out fake bills sometimes, and sometimes they just get passed to you when you're in a store. I mean, you cannot have a man arrested for a counterfeit bill because nobody knows where these bills come from.
Yeah. And like, I've had an incident. I had a lady who was telling me once, and my father even told me this when he was in a store once. At one point, they had, money in the register. He was trying to get change, and they had a $20 bill that was on the counter that they wanted to give to him. He was like, no. You give me what's in the register, because, you have some money that's sitting out there, and they want to give this to you. That could be very well in and of itself be counterfeit and issuing a counterfeit bill. Now, legally speaking, I do know that when they get those or they suspect those, they have to report it either to the Secret Service or to the police. But, realistically speaking, still, there's no way telling that I don't believe George Floyd may have not even known that thing was counterfeit, or they could have given him that bill. And I've heard stories about that and theories on that. I just don't know how true it is, but here's Mr. Floyd. He's dead. He can't answer for it. That's what we do know.
Yeah.
And And I want to ask you this though, but what are your thoughts on these corporations that are giving monies? Like I saw I mentioned Adidas earlier and AT&T. I also saw Bank of America, I believe they're giving like $1 billion. Michael Jordan is giving like $100 million to, they say to people of color. And that's always a dangerous term that's ambiguous, because Asian community can be people of color. Hispanics can be communities of color, or people of color, excuse me. So what are your thoughts on that, Sean?
These are all symbolic gestures meant for these companies to try to avoid dealing with their racist corporate culture and to really avoid dealing with change. Because what a lot of companies want to do is they'll donate money to one of these nonprofits, and it'll passively look like they're trying to fight racism, but aggressively they're looking to not do anything except get a tax write-off. Because if these companies were really serious about fighting so-called racism, there would be more black men working at many of these companies. Because if we look at about the demographics of many of these companies donating all this money, you have to ask the critical question: how many black men are working at these companies, and how many of these black men are actually employed on the regular at these companies? That's the critical question people need to ask. And the second critical question people need to ask is, how many of these companies are setting up a plan to hire many of the unemployed young black men out here like myself who have been looking for jobs for years? And are they making plans to help black men go out here and build careers? Because to sit there and say you're donating money to some nonprofit, that's just something you're doing for a tax write-off, and it does nothing to alleviate the problem. But if you're out here looking to actively hire black men and help build a black economy so that black men can go out here and build in their communities, like building the homes and building families and things like that, and building savings, then you're helping people. Because when a black man is out here and he's working, one, he has a purpose. Two, he can start setting goals for his life, like going out here and getting his own place, getting himself together as related to paying bills and moving himself ahead. And three, setting up to build wealth with tangible assets like a home, or going out here and building wealth by buying things like gold coins or stocks or bonds. And many of these companies, they talk this game about how they're going to donate money to fight this so-called racism, but they're not really about fighting racism. They're all about symbolism. And this symbolism is saying, we donated some money and that helped fight the cause, but they really didn't do anything to fight the cause. Because if you really wanted to do something to fight the cause, you would be out here actively hiring all of these black men out here who have been out of work, like myself. I mean, I have a college degree and years of experience. I mean, you would be making efforts to bring those black men on the job and help them start making efforts to move their lives forward. So they're sitting there talking a good game. And again, all these companies, they just want to get in front of this issue so that they can avoid dealing with the real solution, because the real solution is black men out here working, and black men working out here towards building their own businesses and building their own economic platform. So a lot of these companies, it's all a symbolic gesture. And you have to really watch when you hear these people talking about donation, because they're getting a tax write-off, but the black community is getting nothing. And when they start talking about
that money, that's the main thing we gotta ask.
Yeah. And when they start talking about including others, that's another thing, because that people of color thing, that's another buzzword you have to watch out for, because if they're not saying anything about black people, then these efforts are just a waste of time. So black people, we have to understand that unless they're saying black at all, and black in specific, then we have to look at these gestures as empty gestures and empty symbolism, just meant to get good public press.
Yeah, absolutely. And, to couple with that, Squeaky G had asked, I'm going to go back to what we were talking about. Squeaky wanted to ask this. What's up, Squeaky G? What happens when you open up a store in the hood and you have to deal with the gangbanging youth? It's a real problem. I don't know if you want to take that or me.
Well, you can take it, and then I'll put on my perspective.
Well, I think like Denzel Washington was even saying, and this article came up even a couple years ago, it starts at home. Of course, when you're dealing with the youth, of course, part of it is the family structure is broken down. we know that problem now. When you're talking about dealing with it, when you want to set up a store and so forth, well, you got to be, I think what it is too, when you want to set those stores up, you got to be one that's willing to reach out in the community. People that I know of people that have come back and set up shop in their community or in the hood, for instance, that come back maybe years later, and people will recognize them and they'll say to their, the gangbangers will say, "Hey, don't touch that store. That's my cousin's store, or that's my friend's store. His stuff is off limits." Like even my dad once, when he had his drugstore here in New Orleans off of Ursuline at one point, they made sure the gangbangers that were there that knew him, because I had cousins that distant cousins that were in that life, they made sure nobody touched that. Nobody messed with him. And of course, another thing too, it doesn't hurt to also practice your Second Amendment rights as well, because like you say, is a real problem. You can always talk to somebody, but talk is cheap. It's always about what the walking the walk, and or backing up what you say with actions. So, I would recommend having, you could have a guard there at your stores, and security and so forth. But main thing I think is just reaching out into the community first and foremost, being friendly and neighborly to them. When you start passing out your flyers and so forth, and communicating with especially the elders that are in the community, like the grandparents to those youth who grow up in their house, then when word of mouth comes along and it's good and so forth, then that may work out for you. But yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about with those problems. But Sean, if you want to add on to that.
I think that, you have to reach out to the community and you have to let them know how important a Black-owned business is. And you have to let them know that you're acting on their best interest. And if you take our business out, you're not going to have a place where you're going to get supported. And if you take this business out, that allows these foreigners to come in, and they're going to do worse than anything, because a lot of the gangbangers, they have bought into a lot of false ideas, and they've bought into this whole crab in a bucket mentality. And you have to literally start teaching them the value of Black businesses on the Black community, and the value of Black economics on the overall Black community, because a lot of them, they have bought into all these false ideas, and they really need to understand that without Black-owned businesses, you're not going to have a stronger community. So they really need, again, people to just sit there and talk to them and give them guidance, because a lot of them are just buying into a lot of false ideas. So Black business owners have to really reach out to them and let them know that without our businesses, you're not going to go but so far, because these foreigners, they'll let you stand outside your store, but they're taking your money out of your community. But when you have the Black business, it's bringing money back to you, and can also bring jobs to you, and allow you to be able to help continue to build yourself up as well.
Yeah. Sean, I wanted to bring this up, just getting back on the George Floyd incident right quick, if we can. Did you see the interview on CNN with the attorney for one of the police officers, where he stated his defense was that if anything was that bad, why didn't anyone off the sidewalk or the public say anything or stop them physically from doing it? Did you hear that?
I didn't hear that, but my response would be, the whole thing is nobody was going to do anything, because these police officers had weapons, and a lot of people feared getting arrested as well. So people, they were afraid of getting shot by these police. So that's why they didn't get involved, because interfering in police affairs, that's a felony, I believe.
It is crime.
So a lot of people, they didn't want to get involved because they didn't want to break the law. But a lot of people are now saying that now that they see these officers are breaking the law, we might see them getting out here looking to fight back. But people, they have been programmed to believe that they can trust the police, that the police know better, and that the police are doing something. And if they're doing something, it's right. So this is something people don't understand. But again, these white supremacists, they like to play both sides of the argument. So you have to be careful when they ask these kind of questions.
Right. Well, he's preparing for a defense for his client. And, my thing on that, too, is that when there is a crisis, all laws are shut down. And, at that moment, if I like to think that I would have interfered, but Of course, I know if I had interfered, I would probably been killed with Mr. Floyd as well, too. Also, but some people are, it's easy for people to play armchair quarterback with those things. But I don't know if I could have let something like that happen to a man. And the way he was killed was just graphic. Of course, he's not the first one, and he's not going to be the only one that died. But a lot of people were saying that, like, why nobody helped and stood alone. I mean, some people have said, I just would have died that day, just trying to fight for him. Remember, and if you read the Bible, remember Moses killed the Egyptian because the Egyptian was fighting the Israelite. He was actually going to kill the Israelite, and Moses ended up killing the Egyptian and had to flee because Pharaoh was going to kill Moses in the Bible. So, I mean, sometimes sometimes you got to do what you got to do too. Of course, as an attorney, I can't tell anyone to encourage people to break the law, but I also know that there's another law called morality that trumps all. And there's a human element that factors into all things. Because even when you look at the Breonna Taylor shooting, Mr. Tucker, the boyfriend who was there, he opened fire on those police officers, but those officers were executing a no-knock warrant. And sadly enough, they ended up killing this girl. And unfortunately, I saw recently on CNN, they announced a ban on no-knock warrants. So now if there's a warrant, you got to knock for it. But that's just in Kentucky. I also saw the governor's talking about free health care for all Black residents, which is not pretty bad. I think that is a tangible we could consider. But of course, and I'm getting into this also, you've seen Confederate monuments, Sean, being taken down. I know here in Louisiana, in New Orleans, a couple of years ago when Mitch Landrieu was mayor, he started to take down the 4 statues that we had in New Orleans, like P.G.T. Beauregard and Robert E. Lee, Jeff Davis, and I'm trying to think of a major one here, the other one, but there were 4 that they took down. And we actually have those on the steps of courthouses. But, I consider these removals symbolic gestures and not of substance per se. And of course, NASCAR had announced that they're removing the Confederate flag from all events. But I'm like, who watches NASCAR? But just your take on the removal of the Confederate flag and monuments. Do you think it's a big thing we should all be rejoicing of, or?
I don't think it's anything anybody should be rejoicing over because, again, this is more symbolism. And a couple of years ago, we had a lot of people trying to lobby to get these monuments taken down. And back then I said it's not something we should concern ourselves with because our ancestors weren't concerned about these monuments back in the day. When I look at our ancestors who built these Black-owned businesses and built a Black community, they weren't concerned about these statues. They were concerned about getting themselves ahead. And they weren't really concerned, so we shouldn't be concerned. What we need to be concerned about is building our own platforms and teaching our kids about what these symbols really mean. Because what I see, again, is another passive-aggressive gesture where, yes, passively, they are getting rid of these so-called racist statues of these people from the Confederacy, but aggressively, it's another effort to revise history so that they can change the narrative. And if you don't have the pictures there or the monuments there to show you this history, then you can't teach people about what this era was and what this era was about, or understand the understanding of what these symbols are about. Now, when I look at the Jewish community, you don't see them talking about they wanted to get rid of all this Nazi symbolism because they don't want to forget. But with these people with the Confederacy, they want us to forget so that they can go back and let history repeat itself. Because the only way history repeats itself is if people don't learn about it. And if the symbols aren't there, you can't teach about it, so people cannot learn about what these symbols mean. Now, I look at it again as more symbolism to make Black people feel good, but it is not focused on getting us tangibles that our ancestors were working towards, even while these monuments were being erected. So we need to start thinking like our ancestors and saying, we don't need any more symbolic gestures. We need an agenda focused on getting us tangibles and making sure that we are working towards an agenda towards achieving goals for tangible achievement and accomplishment, not this symbolism, because I could care less about these statues being taken down. I want to see us getting tangible policies that reform our law enforcement so that Black people are not being brutalized and racially profiled. I want to see tangibles that provide Black men and women with equal opportunities in the job market and Black-owned businesses. And I want to see tangible results as related to rebuilding Black men into leaders and authority figures. And I want to see some investment in tangible efforts to rebuild the Black family and reestablish the value of Black fathers to the family. Those are the tangibles I want to see established for the Black community. I'm not wasting my time dealing with superficial symbolic gestures like donations to fight so-called discrimination and all this, and statues taken down. That stuff means nothing at the end of the day. What I want to see is an agenda focused on correcting these centuries of past discrimination and getting tangibles to Black people.
Yeah, my thing is this. Well, I actually worked with a friend of mine. His name is now a fellow attorney, nice guy. We were trying to get, he was doing a campaign to get rid of these Confederate monuments on the steps of the courthouses. And I understood, and of course I agree with it. Obviously, as a Black man, I can't support anything that's the Confederacy. And certainly when you're talking about going in front of a courthouse where you're supposed to get justice, I don't think something like that should be there. Although, yes, there is a historical significance behind these monuments. But of course, in America, if you know the history, I know you do, the Confederacy was there, obviously, to rebel against the United States, and it was a sign of treason. And I know on military bases, they have acknowledged, I think, in the Marines that all Confederate symbols will be banned, as well as in the Navy. Donald Trump has said flat out that he's not changing any of the forts, like Fort Bragg. They're not changing the name of that, even though they were named after Confederate generals, which, it is what it is. I know he wouldn't change it. He was actually talking about that a couple of years before when they were talking about taking down the monuments, because he's appealing to the alt-right. Now, Trump is supposed to be in Oklahoma, Tulsa, Oklahoma, on Juneteenth. Tulsa, Oklahoma, of all places, as you know, Sean, is the place where Black Wall Street was when it was destroyed by these racist, white supremacist extremists, these devils, who took airplanes and dropped nitroglycerin onto a lot of these Black businesses and homes that destroyed thousands of lives and killed thousands of people as well. And he's going to be speaking, and I think, and I'm hoping we all turn up. Black people in Tulsa should turn up, because this would be a perfect time to push, since he's going to be there, reparations. And of course, we're talking about tangibles. And I have this clip of Joe Biden there. That's actually how he looks right now. He's getting. I've just noticed that he's getting ready to answer a question from Ed Gordon. But I wanted to play this clip for you, Sean, and for everybody to take a look at. This is about reparations. And of course, the whole thing has been, you need to vote for Biden or else Trump will get in. It's vote or die, like Diddy would say back in 2004. But let me just show you what I have right here.
We should know we can find that on Biden.com, but I'm not sure what your answer is to the reparations question.
If in fact there are ways in which to get direct payments for reparations, I want to see it. But why are we waiting around for the study? We can deal with it.
Well, they're not mutually exclusive. You don't have to wait around.
No, they're
for
not
the study.
exclusive.
That's my point.
No, but they don't look. They're not mutually exclusive. But I can't believe that whatever it is, the African American community would not support what I'm talking about. In addition to,
I don't think we have to. Let me ask you this. So we can move on. We've got to get some phone calls in as well. But let me ask you this then. If in fact a calculation comes to you that you are satisfied with, would you then say, I'm for reparations?
The answer is it would depend on what it was and will it include Native Americans as well.
All right, let me see if I can get Abba to get us a quick phone call in before we move on to our next topic. Abba?
Okay, so that was that was Joe Biden. He was talking about reparations when asked a question by Ed Gordon, and his response was that only if it included Native Americans. And if we know anything, Sean, and he should be aware of this, that Native Americans received reparations even when President Obama was in office back in 2013. He had reached a settlement at that time, I believe, was one of the largest with some of these tribal groups. I believe it was over $400 million. They were also laws in place. I believe the 1866 treaty that was in place after the Civil War that was supposed to give free Black people reparations, and this happened. But nevertheless, just your thoughts on what you saw with Joe Biden.
Well, I saw him talking around the issue. He did not emphatically say he was for reparations. And then what he wanted to do was include another group. This is another smokescreen that a lot of these politicians like to use, is they like to throw in another ethnic group, like they like to throw in Hispanics. But again, this just shows me he's not serious about reparations. He's just dancing around the issue and trying to make it appear like he's interested in it. But he really, once he gets his votes, he's not going to really care about it. So when I look at this whole Joe Biden on reparations, he doesn't seem like he's very genuine on it. And because if he was really genuine, he would have emphatically just said, yes, I want to give reparations to Black people and Black people only. Because if he was really studious on this issue, he would have known Native Americans have been getting reparations ever since the days of after the Civil War. And Native American communities have been getting government funding and support for years. I mean, when I was doing research for an ISIS story, I knew all about this way back then. And this is something everybody knows. Native Americans have been getting reparations for years, and even Jews have been getting reparations for years, and Japanese people have been getting reparations. But they want to include other people so that they can try to minimize the damage they've done to Black people, because they don't want to pay reparations to Black Americans. What they want to do is throw in another group so that they don't have to deal with the issue of engaging Black people directly and dealing with Black issues directly. And that's something we need to call people out on, because if you're not going to deal with Black issues directly and deal with offering Black people tangibles, then Black people have no reason to vote for Joe Biden or any candidate. If these candidates cannot say emphatically they are for Black people and supporting a Black agenda, then we shouldn't even be talking to them at all.
But Sean, if you do that, Donald Trump will win.
I could care less if Donald Trump wins. It's not a problem for me. Trump is here because America wants Donald Trump, and Donald Trump is a reflection of the American people. I mean, this is what you wanted, because most Americans, they want greatness, but they don't want to put the work in. I could care less if Donald Trump is the president for another 4 years, because Biden, Trump, it doesn't really matter, because we look at the previous record of Barack Obama, who promised hope and change, we got nothing. And under Joe Biden, we're pretty much set up to get the same amount of nothing. So it doesn't matter who's there unless they're offering something to the table.
So, okay, well, so you're not voting.
I don't see anybody offering any tangibles to me as related to voting for them. I mean, for me, saying you're not Donald Trump is not an argument. What are you going to do? And I don't see anybody bringing anything to the table that lets me know what you're going to do different, because I see this candidacy like a job interview. If I'm going to go out here and hire someone to do a job like the executive branch of the United States of America, I want to see what your plan and your vision is for the next 4 years. And the problem with the left is they have not spent time doing their homework, developing a platform for what vision they want to take the country in over the next 4 years. I mean, we know that Donald Trump says, make America great again. We know he makes a lot of rhetoric, but you have to bring something to the table to let me know what you're going to do differently. That was one of the big problems with the Hillary campaign, is that she just wanted to run on Barack Obama's legacy. She took people for granted. She took the voting blocks for granted, especially those white women who voted 60% for Trump. And when you do that, it shows that you're just not coming into this taking it seriously. I mean, if you're like me, if I were to run for president, I'm going to come in with a platform and an agenda saying, this is the vision I have for the country. This is the direction I want to take the country in. And in 4 years, I want to see the country achieving these goals. And I'm hoping that these goals will help us have a better America. For example, I've always said that my agenda would be focused on reinvesting in the American man, rebuilding the American man so that he can take care of his family and his wife, and dealing with this man crisis. I mean, you have to have an agenda for what you want to do and a plan for what you want to do. And I don't see that from your Joe Biden. I don't see it from your Donald Trump. And if we sit there and we say, oh, Donald Trump is incompetent, but what are you going to offer? Because Joe Biden, again, has been here for over 40 years, and he could have addressed.
I'm sorry to cut you off. He should know better about all of that, because Obama was giving Native Americans reparations too. So he's somebody, and he's actually older than Donald Trump.
Yeah, but he had 40 years to deal with this, and you didn't do it. So what are you bringing to the table?
Yeah. Well, I actually think, it's a long way till November. Of course, it's not the popular vote that determines the presidency. Never has been. It's always been the Electoral College that decides that. And there have been multiple instances where popular vote, presidential candidate can win a popular vote, but they won't win the Electoral College. George Bush was a prime example of that, and of course Hillary Clinton last year. So. Yeah, but I'm not sold on Joe Biden either. I think that this is a guy, too, who basically celebrated segregationists like Strom Thurmond and John Stennis. So I'm not interested in him either. Now, I know people who are saying they're going to bite the bullet just because they don't want Trump in there. But I'm like you. I think that there needs to be more that he's offering. And even some Democratic leaders have even said that. But the Democratic Party has failed Black people. If you look even at the cities that we have where there's a majority Black city and we have Black mayors, especially, and even Black female mayors, they have, the poorest, they have some of the worst conditions, some of the highest crime rates, Their cities they're jobless. Their cities are without. They have no businesses that are growing there. So I'm not really sold on the Democrats anymore. I've started to leave them a few years back. So if I vote locally because I'm more impacted by what happens locally. We have a Democratic governor here in Louisiana, John Bel Edwards, who I think is a very competent governor. I think the way he's handled this coronavirus thing has been great. I would say, however, I've had issues with him. The biggest issue, he signed into law that Blue Lives Matter law, which protects police. They've also made what is resisting arrest, which was once a misdemeanor. If it involves an officer, I believe it's now a felony, if I'm not mistaken, with this stuff. And that happened a few years ago when he was while he was governor. So in his first term. And so I have my issues with that. Now, of course, when he ran against this Republican candidate, Eddie Rispone, I don't know, you may not know this, but do you know how many African Americans voted for him, what the percentage was?
No, I don't.
99%. And that was in New Orleans is what put him in office. And it was a very close election. That he only won by like a few, I want to say 10,000 votes, if I'm not mistaken. So it was very close. And of course, he didn't want responding because he's incompetent. But, those are the things we're always faced with. We're faced supposedly with the lesser of two evils, like we're saying here with Trump versus Biden. And, I think a lot of people are tired of it. I know every candidate is not going to be perfect, and that's not what I expect. But as you say, they got to bring something to the table.
Yeah. Because when I look at the candidates, I look at, again, like a job interview, and I want the best candidate for the interview. And neither one of these guys I see as qualified. Biden, again, you've been here for 35, 40 years, and all these issues were here, and you did nothing about them. So he shows me that you're an ineffective leader. And Donald Trump is just, he does not have the public administration experience, nor does he have the vision to do anything. He's primarily mostly emotion, and he has no real vision for anything. He's just one of these trash talkers who makes a lot of noise, but he's not qualified to be a president. So I'm not seeing any candidates who are presenting themselves with, again, a vision for the country, an agenda they want to set for the country, a plan for what they want to take the country. And that's why I say I just can't vote for any of them, because I don't see what they're offering me, and I don't see what they're going to provide me. Because I mean, I've listened to these guys talk about jobs and all this stuff for over 12 years, and I have not been able to get one of these jobs that they have promised in that almost decade or so.
But you know something, Sean? Say what you want about Trump. You saw as soon as he got in, he started to do whatever the hell he wanted to do. He was pushing his agendas and stuff. He was proactive with things. Of course, they may have not been all for our benefit, but I noticed that versus Barack Obama, where he had a predominantly all Democratic. Well, he did have a Democratic Congress in his first 2 years, and we didn't get even a great deal of things. Even when he was termed out, I thought that perhaps some of these police departments, they could have, I wouldn't say defund, but they could have been stripped of some things, like, of course, military style weapons that they've had, that they were using. They actually used someone's telling me this in Ferguson, the chemical weapons that they had used that came from the federal government that they were using on protesters. So it didn't start with Donald Trump. Barack Obama called the kids in Baltimore who were uprising after the death of Freddie Gray, who were looting and stuff. He called them thugs and so forth. So, presidents are there to maintain the status quo. No matter what the color is or what party they are there to maintain the status quo and also be the face of law and order. So with Trump, it didn't surprise me with some of the things that he was doing. He's a reflection of America, as what you say. And I would not be surprised if he won again, just at the rate things are going. Because when you see these people out there with Black Lives Matter, all of us could be screaming Black Lives Matter, but what matters is what's going to happen on Election Day. Because CNN had it where Hillary Clinton was going to beat this guy, and that didn't happen. Same thing with Joe Biden. They have Joe Biden now picked to beat Trump in a landslide, if I'm not mistaken. But
yeah, well, one of the big problems with Black Lives Matter and all these other people, I remember watching that day on 2016 after the election. There was a lot of people out there marching and protesting, and I remember one reporter asked a critical question. He asked one of these kids who was protesting Trump, "Did you vote?" And he said no. So a lot of these young people, they sit there and they get mad talking about how they hate Trump, but they don't vote anyway. So that they can sit there and march and protest. But again, the Democrats have to give you something to vote for. I mean, say what you will about slick Bill Clinton, at least he gave people something to vote for. And that's the problem with them. They just don't present an argument. They take people for granted. And I'll keep saying that because when I look at the left, they just take all of their supporters for granted. They don't understand that you're going to have to work if you want to win an election. You're going to have to bring something to the table, and you're going to have to get allies on your side. You just can't sit there and say you're not the other guy. You have to have an argument for what you want to counteroffer to the table. It's like a video I did yesterday with the Black Lives Matter when they said they wanted to defund the police. And I countered and said, we need an investment in Black fathers, and we need an investment in Black men. Because to sit there and say, we want to defund the police and then not offer something in exchange, that just is a hollow argument. Because I lived in New York City in the 1980s where where the police weren't there, and crime went through the roof. And crime went through the roof because we had no Black fathers in the home. We had no Black men running businesses. We had no Black male leadership. And because there was no black male leadership, we had nothing but chaos. And that's what we would have if we defunded the police. Exact same thing.
And keep in mind something with that as well. If you talk about one thing that this can do, this may backfire on people, this movement now, because we're screaming Black Lives Matter, which, yes, of course they are. But then you're saying, well, let's defund the police. And of course, the conservatives and the whites some of whom who are sympathetic, if you want to use that term, about what happened with George Floyd, although they may have been just sympathetic publicly, privately, they may go ahead and just say, after that statement, say, oh, this is too much. I ain't doing this shit. And then go vote for Donald Trump because they know that stuff is not going to happen under him. And it's not going to happen under Biden either, because Biden has aligned with the police departments. You know, these police unions, as you know, are extremely powerful. What I do think should happen when these shootings happen and we see what happened with George Floyd, I think that those cops, when they have to actually settle these cases, when the city has to settle them, those cops should be stripped of their pension, or that money, part of it should come out of the pension fund that they have. Because I think a lot of that would make them think twice about, oh, I'm going to kill a nigga today. I think that might be a way, one way. We can't, obviously, most of us don't even know how to use weapons. So I don't see how we're even ready to start a revolution. Like people say, oh, we're getting ready to revolt. No, you're not. You don't even know where you're going to get your weapons from.
It's a good question, because
your weapons are going to be, you have no weapons. You don't know how to make your own food. You got to buy your weapons from Cabela's and Bass Pro Shop. Good luck getting them from there. If you talk about starting a revolution, some of us don't even know how to hold a gun, and then growing your own food and so forth. The only options, the white man, I've always been told this by an old friend who said this once, an old teacher at St. Archaisu, Mr. Paul Boyer, may he rest in peace. He said, real white people only understand two things. The white man only understands two things: money and force. That's it. That's all he cares about: money and power, money and violence. They don't understand anything else. So when you start talking about money, that's something that is within our control that we can do. We don't have to shop at these places that disrespect us. We can circulate the dollar if we get our minds together, as you said, and start investing in the stock market. Like I started investing in some different things, like and it's very simple. If you get apps like Cash App and so forth, you can invest, as you know, like in Apple or Nike or things like that. I would rather do that than just go and give them all my money on shit that's going to break.
Yeah. I have to agree on that.
Yeah. But Sean, I do want to ask you this before we leave. Are there some businesses that other ventures outside of writing that you're interested in?
I do. I look at all black-owned businesses. If there are black-owned businesses,
no, I mean you that you are interested in, as far as like you're a writer. But I mean, do you have any other business ventures? Like, did you ever, think about setting up like a school to teach writing or things of that nature? With
not yet. I'm not ready to do that. That's why I do the live streams and stuff, because I'm trying to get ready to do that type of teaching. I usually do that type of teaching on a live stream, and then I just take the super chat money, and that's how I do that type of thing, or I do a Patreon type of thing. So that I take baby steps with everything. I don't really rush everything that's related to business ventures.
Yeah, and that's what you got to do, because it may hurt you in the end.
Because I was getting ready to do a comic book venture, but then I couldn't raise the funds, so it's a lot of work to get stuff going. So when I was trying to do an Indiegogo, I tried to get it funded, but because I thought people were interested, but it just didn't take off. So I'm trying to find another way to do that so I can get my first graphic novel to the marketplace. So it takes time to do things. People think that you just can come out here and do it fast, but you got to have the support, and it's hard to get the support, especially when you're trying to do positive black fiction or doing things that are different or talking about different aspects of the black community. It's a very tough challenge. So it just takes time for me to get the resources together. I mean, 10 years ago, I wasn't here, and I'm finally starting to make some steps towards improving things. Like I just put a new cover on The Temptation of John Haynes after so many years with that book having a hand-drawn cover. It just takes time to do things, and that's one of those things with black businesses, that they starve because they can't get the resources for investment because Black people don't support them, and then other people don't support them.
Right. Can't get a loan from a bank. You got to do. I mean, did you consider doing a GoFundMe page for like?
I have a Patreon that I use mostly for the internet and for paying for book covers and things like that. So that's all how I pay for most of the stuff. And I also use Cash App, but that's about it. But that's how I do things mostly, because from donations and things like donations that I get, Patreons, Cash Apps, that's how I pay for everything. And again, it's a hard road because I had hoped to have done all this with a full-time job, but it just didn't work out that way. So it takes time to do things, and when you don't have as much money, you have to work slower, but you eventually get there. I mean, if I had more money and I could get a big break, I would work faster and I'd be able to get more stuff out.
Yeah, it does take time. I'm still working on my second book. You know, I haven't written my first. This is going to be my first book in almost about 12 years, actually. Just because I was busy at that time with law school and trying to figure out what I was going to do with my life. And I'm still doing that because, you know, I'm still a little young at this point, but there's still things that I think of doing, of course. And, you know, I know what it means, what it's like. So you just got to keep pushing it, man. But you're doing that. You've written over 75 books.
Yeah.
And you got The Temptation of John Haynes that is out right now.
It's got a new refreshed cover. Finally, after 9 years, I finally got enough money to put the new cover on, thanks to my patrons and the donors and the people donating to the super chats. That if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't be able to improve the quality of SJS Direct publications. And
you're welcome.
Thank you. If it wasn't for you guys, I wouldn't be able to improve the quality, hire professional artists, and be able to even put some Black artists on, because a lot of so for the John Haynes series, the covers are done by Mike Williams, a Black artist, again, putting more money into investing in other Black people, which is what I do on the regular, making sure that Black dollars come back to the Black community. I mean, in order for me to do that, I need the support. So that's what people don't understand. It's just, it takes time to do things, and it takes time to get things done.
My next book, though, I'm definitely going to have it done before the end of the year. By the fall, I think before Thanksgiving, I want to say, I think it should be finalized and have everything ready. So I'm working on that now during the summer to try and get fixed, and definitely just got to keep pushing it. So you hear that, brothers and sisters, donate to the channels of our fellow Black YouTubers, because it takes a lot of work to come on here and give our time to you and to give you this information and to talk about things that are relevant. So you have Sean's Patreon, you have right here. You can get his books. That's another way to support him, The Temptations of John Haynes. I have The Man Crisis, which I started to read, Sean, which is a damn good book. How many copies of that song?
I've sold about 350 and it's headed towards 400.
Yeah, I have an electronic version of it, so I like that. But yeah, please donate to the channel, Gavin Richard Esquire, or Google Pay, gavin.grich1@gmail.com. I also have a Patreon, which is the YouTube name, gboot2786. And to my Patreons, who are probably not watching right now, I'm going to be doing another video soon. I also started doing a podcast on Anchor, and that's one way that I'm getting my stuff out. I'm actually probably a little later on tonight, if I have time, or tomorrow, I'll be uploading the next episode, because there's some new information that's coming out, and just to give you my thoughts on recent things. And so it's always good to do this, guys, and it's always to come on with Sean. Hold on, we got a comment, one last comment. Squeaky G, shout out to Squeaky G. He's one of my mods here. Squeak says, we'll definitely check out your books. Yeah.
Oh, thank you very much.
Yeah. And also check out one of my book, Katrina, Eyes Have Not Seen, Ears Have Not Heard. Where's that at? This is on Amazon. Yeah, say hello to Prince. My book that I wrote back in 2008. It's on Amazon. So anybody that wants to look at it. But yeah, just a little plug-in. But Sean, thank you once again, brother, for coming on. We're gonna have to do this again as always, man.
All right. Well, thank you for having me.
And you have a new live stream that you're gonna be doing tomorrow.
Yeah. I'm still focusing on the topic, but it's going to be about black male leadership as related to these George Floyd protests, and that's what it's going to be related to, because we really need to focus on black men speaking for themselves, and that's something I want to see more black men speaking for themselves. Because
no Terry Crews or Billy Porter.
No, not these hand-picked people, but our own people coming out and speaking and talking about what we want, because everybody wants to tell us what we want, but we need to speak for ourselves and let everybody know what we want clearly ourselves.
Yeah. And, these guys who, of course, I've mentioned are, Silly Porter and Terry Crews. These are the guys that handpicked to speak on stuff like that. And, I already commented and did my video on Terry Crews, but when you talk about shit you don't know, bro, you really need to be quiet.
Yeah.
He should speak to Dr. Claude Anderson. He should speak to Tariq Nasheed, or, even, and I have my issues with him, even a Michael Eric Dyson.
Yeah.
People that are at least educated. And, he seems like a nice guy, a Terry Crews, but even nice guys can say stupid shit.
Yeah.
Yeah. But and Billy Porter, that's another story.
Yeah, but none of them can be talking about black men's issues. We need to be hearing from black men, not black women, not whites, not non-blacks. We need to be hearing from black men. And that's one of the things I don't like, is not us not hearing from black men as related to these racial profiling and police brutality and all of these race issues. We need to hear from black men, because our experience is distinct and we're not getting our voices heard, and we're not allowed to present our agenda regarding it.
Okay. First, before we go, Sean, I just want to shout out to the new subscribers. We got the Far Side fan saying, hello, Sean and G-Boot. I'm glad I caught both of you on this. I also have a new subscriber in, let's see who this brother's name is. Is it Jeffrey A, if I'm not mistaken, or Jeffrey A? Yes, thank you for subscribing to the channel here, gboot2786. I am Gavin Reshaw Presents, guys. This has been my guest, Mr. Sean James. Thank you, Sean, for coming on. You're always welcome to come on. Please support Sean and his books, By the Man Crisis, as well as The Temptation of John Haynes. You can check out his YouTube channel, self-entitled Sean James. I am Gavin Reshaw with Gavin Reshaw Presents. Also, look up my podcast, and I'll put the link right here, the feed, so everyone can look at. It is in and of itself entitled Gavin Reshaw Presents, and you guys can actually, let me just copy the URL right quick so you guys can have that, and you'll be able to look at it and check out some of the episodes, because I'll have them uploaded each week. But that is it right there on Anchor.fm. Gavin Reshaw, that is my name, guys. And I am out of here. Sean, thank you again, buddy.
All right. Thank you for having me.
All right. Peace and blessings, family. Good night.
Now available on Google Play, Smashwords, and the iBooks. John Haynes, the man with nothing to lose. The man who rules the world runs into the irresistible force of a man with nothing to lose in this action-packed all-new John Haynes series adventure. Get John Haynes, the man with nothing to lose on Google Play, Smashwords,